What's going on, everybody? Mark Helmut with the Nightmares podcast, where we talk about all things horror, movies, music, filmmaking, music making, whatever we want. And now we are exclusively going to guests. I, of course, have my partner in crime here, Mr. Zachary Smith. And we have an amazing guest here. It's actually a friend of the podcast, a great friend of Dennis Preston. We have Zoe Kavanagh, hailing from right over the pond. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, I'm Zoe Kavanagh. I am a filmmaker and sometimes musician. But I don't know. I mean, direct music videos on right now, just on post-production on my second feature. And I don't know.
Fair enough. That's good enough. And then what is the name of your particular production company?
Well, the one I've been working with recently, that I guess I'm part of that company, is Upon Blue Bridge Productions, and that is run by my producing partner, Leona Duff, who produced Demon Hunter: Time to Kill. That's the company. And
Very nice. And we'll definitely talk about that feature in just a bit, because we got to check it out. Check out a little bit of it. But on the Nightmares podcast, we always start with one question that kind of devolves into a whole discussion. So, when did horror touch your life? When did it begin to get into your life? And maybe do a little bit of a deep dive into what happened with that.
I would say when I was very young. Over here, I don't know, you guys have different like cable TV or whatever, but over in UK and Ireland, we had a thing, Sky Movies, and I think Sky Movies is still a thing, but back then, dead screen films all the time. And late at night, they would show horror films. And I think one of the first horror films I've ever seen was A Nightmare on Elm Street, when I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 maybe, and I just got obsessed. So surreal. In actual fact, I find horror films are more effective when you're a kid, more imaginative, and more because you don't know whether they're based on real life or not because you're so young. But it sparked my imagination, and I would say all those like iconic characters are the ones that kind of, they stuck with you, like whether it be Friday 13th, it be Halloween, Elm Street, Hellraiser. But then at the same time, I was probably watching the real Ghostbusters all the time back then. But I'd say, that would be the earliest, I guess, exposure to horror would be really young, sneaking into the living room late at night to watch absolutely messed up stuff.
Well, so now you piqued my curiosity. So was there anything of the messed up stuff that you didn't list in the previous thing? I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I would say that I actually remember this. I was over at a friend's house. We recorded Nightmare on Elm Street on VHS, and I kept playing back Johnny Depp's Blender death over and over again. We were like, wow, he just goes under the bed, he comes out as a milkshake. Oh, we need to see this again and again and again and again. So I just morbidly fascinated by gory stuff. I don't know. The Return of the Living Dead was something I used to watch on repeat, and Evil Dead 2. And at that point, no one stopped me from watching those films, because at that point you become like, if you've seen Nightmare on Elm Street, anything lesser, it's not a big deal. It's like, I think people are more concerned over like nudity than they are violence. And Yeah.
That's always such a strange thing. That's a thing over here in the U.S. too, about like nudity versus violence. I always found it very strange. I subscribe to more of the like the European ideology with that. Like, I think if you're going to show one, you should just show both and call it a day. I mean, that's a stupid. Like if you can watch people get dismembered, I guarantee you can handle some boobs. I mean, it's not that big a deal. Like I think that one's like way more influential than the other one. Just to be perfectly honest. But Zach started his journey very early too. He was like 2 or 3 or whatever. When he was rocking with Freddie and Jason. So it's always fun to hear when people have started their horror journey very very early on in life.
Yeah, I think actually, which reminds me, I'd say before I'd seen a lot of horror films, the first gateway film into horror would have been Army of Darkness, I would say, because I know it's more of a sword and sorcery comedy film, but it was like I remember the prologue to that film, and it's just called Army of Darkness. It's not called Evil Dead 3 or The Medieval Dead or anything. It's just called Army of Darkness, and that's what was sold as to target a wider audience. So I was watching it, and the opening where he's recapping Evil Dead 2 reenacted, and I kept saying, is this a sequel to something? And I was told, no, it's not. Watch the film. eventually I found out it was a sequel to 2 mad horror films. But yeah, no, Army of Darkness was amazing. It was at the time, I don't know. I mean, I think a cartoon called Skeleton Warriors, and it looked like that, and I was like, oh my god, this is cool. This guy's fighting skeletons. But yeah, I'd say there was films that kind of led to opening the gates to more nastier stuff.
I love that. I love that. You know what? And actually, something funny. I have never told him this. And I never actually said it to anybody because I just remembered it. Actually, I had the same experience that you did. A friend of mine when I was very young had I guess his dad had a VHS of Army of Darkness, and we threw it on, and that was before I even knew like kind of even what horror was, except a glancing look at the remake of the I think House on Haunted Hill, and I got to see the security guard without a skull and without a face and all that great stuff, and I'm like, whoa, what's that? That's weird. And then all of a sudden my buddy said, hey, my dad's away. Like, you want to check out this really crazy movie called Army of Darkness? I'm like, yeah, let's check it out. And I have just very faint memories of watching it. But it wasn't until you actually mentioned that I remember that story.
Yeah, it just came to me there when I was thinking about going back. Thinking about when I was younger, I was like, wow, oh yeah, that happened. It's just that prologue was so wild, where obviously like they have this like stop motion of his hand getting possessed with all the like stenciled things, and he cuts it, but the camera moves away. It was cleverly reshot to kind of target a younger audience, I suppose. But for some reason, it got an R-rated anyway in America, but they were trying to get PG-13. But it was that Geyser of Blood in the Pit that got that film the R-rating, which was, they should have just cut that Geyser of Blood out of the film.
It probably would have made a difference, honestly. And that movie is just more funny than anything. I mean, I actually think that's probably one of the funniest horror movies of all time. It's a constantly quotable horror movie, so it's really really cool. I'm curious though too is did you also grow up, like in a lot of the United States, and I don't know what your age bracket is, but but I know that a lot of us, the 90s kids in America, grew up with the Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark kind of Saturday morning cartoon type deals. So I don't know if that was a thing overseas. We're starting to discover there's some very interesting differences. We've been talking to a lot of people from a couple different countries, and everybody has a very different experience when it comes to their first approaches to horror. So I'm very curious if you ever had, those shows growing up, but again, I don't know, what years that you were coming up.
Yeah, I think Nickelodeon was showing Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps, and I did watch those shows, and I was a big horror fan as a kid. There was even these like they had these like spooky books called Spine Chillers, and you collect them onto a folder. I liked all that spooky stuff. Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps, I watched them, but I don't actually remember much about the shows. I think I was actually X-Files I would watch as well, and Buffy for sure. But Buffy didn't start till when did Buffy start? I think it was mid 90s. But yeah, as soon as Buffy started, I was watching that every time I came home from school. That'd be on like 7 p.m. and I'd like watch it 5 days a week when it was on Sky One. Um, I'd say we probably actually just had kind of the same upbringing of horror exposure, obviously in different regions, but I think the same, yeah. And let me see, what was the first horror film I'd seen? I think I was six. No, I could have seen a horror film earlier than 2003, but I would have been 16 in 2003. And I went to see Freddy versus Jason in the cinema. Yeah. Yeah. And I went to see that on repeat, by the way, in cinema. Yeah. Well, that was at the time, yeah, in the web period. You know, Hollywood doesn't do it anymore, where they had these soundtrack albums where they tailor made those soundtrack albums for my taste in music, and two of the songs out of the 20 would be in film, and you'd get the album, and you're like, oh my god, I'm going to see this film. This album's deadly. Then you watch the film, you're like anticipating some of the songs that are on the album, like, wow, none of them. But yeah, no, I liked Freddy vs. Jason. It's crap, but it's good crap. And The Ring, I'd seen that as well. Then, and yeah, a lot of the J horror remakes were coming out at the time, the early 2000s, and Resident Evil and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely made a comeback. You know, they got very Japanese there in the early 2000s. And by the way, I'm like some of these phrases that you've been using, I'm gonna steal them from you. The it's crap, but it's good crap. And then also I feel silly because like what you said about Nightmare on Elm Street, like about him turning into a blender, like into a milkshake, like I'm going to use that from now on all the time. Like, and I never thought to say that, but it makes so much fucking sense. They, which I loved. That's a great way to describe that situation.
Yeah, and that's the way it is solidified in film. I know there's a crappy deleted scene where he rises out, and I'm so glad it's not in the film. They should have just completely burnt the rushes of that deleted scene, because it kind of, if anyone sees it, just ruins the illusion of the scene. But yeah, that's exactly, there's no other way to think about what happened when he went underneath that bed, aside from Freddy doing it with his glove or something, you know.
Maybe we'll for a bit of fun and everything else, we'll put in a milkshake blender effect, a sound effect into that scene. See how it sounds. Not to crap too much on the late Wes Craven's work, but I think that would be really fun to do. But no, I love that. You know, I'm curious because we've been asking, you know, like I said, we've had quite a few people from a couple different countries, and they've had different experiences. What is your experience? What was your experience like, and then what does it continue to be with in your country when it comes to horror? Is it more westernized like America, or is it not is the community not into horror? Is there not really necessarily a fan base? You know, I know it's kind of silly coming from the UK area, but like I am very curious about, you know, what's the horror community like out there, and what was it like you being a very, very big fan growing up? You know, was that kind of slightly part of the mainstream, or was that very on the outskirts?
No, I think it was fairly common with it. Like, I mean, in a sense that, you know, I mean, there's always horror films coming out in cinemas, and I would usually go to any of them that pique my interest, and you know, if they'd either be sold out or no one goes to see them. But I mean, I think it's just reflective of what people are interested in terms of yeah, I mean, like, I'm a bit of a rocker. I'm into metal, and most metalers like horror, you know. And like, I would go to some local rock bars, and I have a few friends, and we all generally have the same taste, you know. So I think definitely don't feel like an outsider with horror. And I mean, horror over the years has just grown and grown and grown to be just kind of a thing, like, you know, in the zeitgeist. But I don't know. No, it's just you know, you go see a film, it's DVD or it's on streaming now, you know. But in terms of taste, I mean, it's hard to really say. what other people do. I know that like in my family, I know my parents don't like horror, and yeah, yeah. I guess in a sense you could look at like being a black sheep if you have that kind of taste. But to me, it's not just horror. Like I like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like comedy. I like good storytelling, and I like escapism. So I think.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I ask is it's just been very interesting that we've had a guest on from Romania, we've had a guest on from Spain, and I remember specifically the one from Spain was like, yeah, the entire country is just very like anti-horror. They they don't want any part of it. They're very superstitious. I know that's very specific to Spain, so it's kind of
that's mad. Yeah, because like I'd say that's definitely the case here because companies need to make money. They put X amount of money into these films. They're expecting, a certain number of people to show up. So the marketing would really target everyone as much as they can. Obviously, like you'll see ads everywhere for any film that comes out, and yeah. So I mean, it's not like I'm living in a one-horse town. I suppose like Dublin City. With a city's a city. I think and. Yeah, people see it as a film. Like, films are just seen as horror films would be considered like a popcorn flick, like comedies or action movies, So, there's no stigma against the genre. I've never really felt there was in my generation anyway. I'm sure there definitely was in the 80s. I think they had these whole, there was video nasties, there was things getting banned before my day, but I think times have changed,
For sure. The it's kind of so I guess the further west we've traveled in our international family at this point, the more it gets closer to what we experience in the United States. On that same vein, do you have the same, because we've gone to many cons and we're very, very big in the horror community. Of filmmakers and creative people, podcasters, artists, all that stuff. We have a lot of cons and things like that. Is that the same? Where you're at? Do you have cons and things of that nature for the community, or is that kind of exclusively a United States thing?
We have Dublin Comic Con, but we did. Someone did attempt to do a horror convention over here, and it wasn't too successful. Screenvention, but they put it in a hotel in the middle of nowhere. They had Kane Hodder, Tony Todd. They had a bunch of names like that, but no one showed up to that. However, in the UK, they have a bunch of them, and in October, I went to For the Love of Horror. And that was one of the biggest ones over in the UK. It was cheapest flyer to UK. And they had everyone there. They had the Terrifier cast and crew. They had Fright Night. So many people were at that one. But yeah, that For the Love of Horror would definitely, to me, it was comparable to Horror Hound. I was at Horror Hound. And it's many horror conventions in America. I'm sure that'll change when, in time, but the UK has a lot of them. Ireland tried one, didn't really work out, but they have like the Comic-Con ones and the sci-fi stuff. Those ones seem to be more popular, I guess, or maybe someone just took one risk and placed a bad location on one and it didn't do too well, and that's why they haven't gambled with doing another one over here. Just wasn't a success.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I love that. We're big fans of the horror community. When you go over to the cons, we always joke, say, we feel very, there's an amazing belonging, when we go to the cons, and everyone, it's a kind of a strange twist of irony that all these horror fans that love deplorable, sick and twisted things are the nicest, sweetest, caring, kindest people that we've had the pleasure of meeting. So I'm curious, is that the same type of deal over in the UK? When you've gone to many of these cons, do you have a sense of camaraderie within the community, or is it kind of separated?
Well, I'm a big. I'm not a very social person. I'm quite a loner, but from observing with like the few friends I'd be around with. Yeah, people like to dress up. The thing about horror is a lot of people celebrate horror, and loads of people get into character, dress up as their favorite characters, and the whole thing looks like Halloween on steroids. I think no, it's just a celebration of what people love in genre, and it's all just fun. It's a good way to kind of go away from your daily life. I think conventions are expensive. If I could afford to go to a lot of them, I would. And I'm not a big signature fan myself, but it was interesting, like to see the talks, when you get Q&As with cast and crew, and getting to meet some of the celebs, and there's always good vibes there, I guess.
Nice, nice. No, I love that. So I'm curious, now. How did filmmaking come into your life? And then when we get into that, I want to hear about how the love of horror and the love of filmmaking kind of connected. So I'm curious how you started making films and making shorts and all that great stuff.
I got into filmmaking because I've always had like a vivid imagination, and I wanted to kind of bring my dreams to life, like record my dreams in a sense. I've always felt like I've had ideas in my head that I want to just present to other people, and when I got the urge was probably 20 years ago in my teens. I'm like, oh, I want to get into filming, and then that was like the start of mini DV, and so ended up making a lot of not so good experimental stuff, and then got into college in 2006. I did film, television, Ballyferma, did a year in that, then a year in cinematography, and I was doing music videos for bands. And the great thing about getting into music videos, because to try and because I had like a very surreal style, I wanted to kind of just use music videos as an exercise to learn more and improve more. And over time, then I went on to do a degree course in IADT, National Film School of Ireland, and start to develop. I'd written actually like loads of different feature scripts, and there was always like, but I had one in mind I particularly wanted to make, and filmmaking. I'm trying to think. I've seen a lot of Irish films that are terrible, and I just said to myself, if they can do that, I'm sure I can do a bit better, and that's the thing. But my taste in cinema is mostly inspired by fantasy and horror, and less social drama. So a lot of the stuff that, like, say, I guess Irish funding parties would finance would not often be genre films, and if they would, they'd be really low grade, well, not in cost, but low grade quality scripts that are comedy horrors that just don't work. But I don't know, I had some ideas I really want to tell, and I really want to get into filmmaking to make a stamp on the planet. So, even if I'm dead and gone in the future, that the stories that I created exist, even if people like them or not. I made a mark, so it's kind of one of the appeals to it,
Everything that you just said resonates completely. And there's something about longevity and legacy with film. It's kind of a cool thing, like you just said. After I'm long gone, those films will still be here. As the joke between independent filmmakers is will anybody see them? That's to be debated. But but that being said, they will still be there. And they will be there for they'll be there. But whether or not somebody will see them will be for history to decide. I love that. And then obviously you just being a fan of horror, just made sense for you to do more horror, like things, and kind of developed your style. Is that a fair thing?
Yeah, definitely. It's always been trying to kind of grab that style and just make it exactly what your visions in your head are, and just trying to get it right, and not kind of like, obviously you understand the language of cinema, understand the key techniques of cinematography and directing and all that, but then understanding that and then dismantling it and trying to do something unique with it. I mean, a lot of things, like, I guess, that's where sometimes experimental music video type styles come into play as well, with montages and so forth. But yeah, I mean, in regards to horror, like, for example, I've always been like, watched a lot of horror films. I'm like, even the ones that I like, I'm like, I would have liked had they done that, or had they done this, had they approached that way. And I figured, that's kind of got me into the writing of it. I think learning screenwriting, I would read loads of horror scripts and just look at how they formatted it, and yeah.
No. I love that. I love that sensibility. So, you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Something that, speaking of style, so something that Zach and I, we watched a couple different items, a couple of music videos. We got to check out your feature as well. Thank you for sending that over. And I wanted to talk to you about something we noticed and we love, by the way. This is a love letter to your style. Is that it's very reminiscent of that early 2000s to late 90s feel, that the feel of the Matrix and Underworld, and it has that very specific style that we were trying to come up with a freaking name for it, but we couldn't actually identify it. But we both absolutely love that era and that style. So I'm very curious, was that intentional? Is that something that you love, or is that just something that kind of happened organically? Because it's a very cool, and it's kind of films that of a bygone era. Like, it's, when we watched it, we're like this is our fucking childhood. Like, these are the movies that we watched as teenagers, and something that we have a deep love for. So I'm very curious, was that was that your intention, or did it just kind of happen organically?
I think it happened organically because I know when I was shooting that movie and Luca was DP in the first film, we were huge John Carpenter fans, and so that's why a lot of time we didn't want to go too wild with the camera in certain shots. We want to kind of restrain with some nice wides. But whenever I color grade something, it's always quite saturated because I love colors. And I think that's another factor into how it looks like that era. The montages are another factor. I guess my taste in gothic industrial music was another factor that kind of set that tone. Inspiration, like, the honest truth is, and a lot of critics have thought, like, Buffy wasn't an influence for Demon Hunter. It never was. But I took the idea that people were going to think that, and I put a gag of like an 8-bit ringtone of Buffy on the phone just to kind of give an Easter egg for someone. But in certain terms of style, it does kind of have that vibe. It definitely doesn't have modern vibe. It doesn't have even older vibe. It just has that era vibe. And I did, unlike most, the majority, I did like the Mila Jovovich Resident Evil movies and the Underworld movies. That I had a good time with them, even if they're flawed movies. To me, they're fun. And I liked the Blade movies and action horror. I mean, at the time, that was kind of like, there was a lot of that stuff in the late 90s and the 2000s. And I guess a lot of that just kind of slid itself into the film of, like, when you're shooting a film and you're thinking of things. The film was storyboarded. I guess your imagination is pulling from all the stuff you've seen, and in that is forming the film style. And to me, I always felt colors set like a memorable. You always remember scenes, and you don't think about the colors, but the colors, like if a film was in black and white, kind of scenes would kind of blend into each other. But if there was different colors, different like say for example, the police station's red, and you remember it's red because of the demon breaks in, or like some of the night is blue, and then you have like some of it is green. To me, they were kind of like they're all taught about whether tone consistency, editing styles, or lenses or whatever, but it was trying to bring in all the inspirations of what inspired the story. And the interesting about the first Demon Hunter was, I guess I was trying to be a bit, we didn't have a lot of money, so we were trying to make it half a character drama and half an action horror. And I felt like at the time, I felt like that was kind of like, that was a story that I was really proud of and I wanted to tell. However, audiences expect to be horror fighting demons for the whole film. But yeah, I was inspired by superhero movies, script formats at the time, like I guess like Iron Man and all those origin films, and X-Men First Class. But I guess the audience it was targeted for wanted something different, but whatever, I don't care. I like that film.
No, absolutely, and like it was yeah. I mean, and it's funny that you mentioned the color saturations. It reminded me very much of of the Matrix as well. Everything in the Matrix world is green, and everything in the real world is blue. So it has that very, very distinct look. And and I was even saying the early 2000s superhero movies, which I love. They may be flawed, but I do love them. The Sam Raimis and the Daredevils and that type of type of feel to it. I
like Daredevil.
I mean, and I mean this. And by the way, and I mean this with the most love. I was almost expecting some early 2000s like Evanescence to come on and really just jam.
If we could have afforded, they would have been.
I would have been like right there. I'd been like I am fucking in this. And then also too is the soundtrack was great. Like I loved, for being an independent movie, it was really good and engaging. Because most of the time let's be perfectly honest. Like most of the time when you watch a lot of independent films, and we've watched several, and we have our own, unless we know an artist, which we've used before, we know composers and artists. Most of it's all, stock bullshit. It's all, stuff you've pulled the internet and everything else. And sometimes it works, but you can still tell. When I was watching this, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is actually fitting. It's engaging. I like the beat to it. And it's very fitting of that style. So, and this is not so much a question as it is a compliment to you.
Well, I'd actually like to talk about the soundtrack for a bit on the film, because to me it's extremely important. Like as you said, a lot of independent films, they either, and I think it's actually this is the factors. They're afraid to reach out to a label to negotiate a cost for a song. They're afraid to reach out for certain artists to see how much they can afford. So they go with the safe option of getting someone cheap, and that's not putting the heart and soul into the film. To me, there's a rock opera element to the whole Demon Hunter franchise because it was all created through music. And to me, like The Crow, music is an important piece of the film. Some songs were created by myself. In actual fact, Niamh Hogan, who plays Taryn, she sings the funeral song. That song was written by me, Scott Hope, and sung by her. And then there's licensed songs. There was this fantastic artist who I discovered on YouTube called the Enigma TNG, and he made so many like great industrial metal tracks, and I was hearing all of them like, fuck, I want to use that. So I talked to him and I was like, man, I have these ideas for some of these tunes. They're going to kick ass in the film. And so he even had his dubstep track, Monster Killer, in the end credits. But he had this really awesome heavy metal tune that I used in the fight when she fights all the demons in the castle. But yeah, no. And then we got Julian K, which are kind of a big band in LA. And we used one of their songs for a montage. So it was a mixture of making some songs, licensing songs, and also telling the composer to approach it in a more fun way and get rid of the whole generic tone that a lot of composers do, because give a bit more synth vibe to it, because to me it has to kind of stick out, because the simpler the melodies, the more catchy they become in people's heads. And that's kind of how we approached it. I definitely don't go the lazy cheap route with soundtrack for my films. You know, I think it is really important, and yeah, I think the soundtrack's pretty kick ass in that film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, you don't have to talk to me about it. I'm obsessed with music almost as much as I'm obsessed with film. And actually, something fun. And again, another a really good compliment that I love is like you. And I remember like we were talking, we're having a good time with the film, and that's ultimately, I'm sure, what your goal was is for people to have a good time, watching this film, and at the very, very end, you legitimately had a roll credits moment too, which I loved. That's very much of that 2000s is the title of the movie, is the last line of the movie, and literally that's a running joke, of roll credits, and I'm like, she literally did a roll credits. And I fucking love that. It's so I was like ah and then of course the montage at the end, and like, I mean. And that's why I asked you these questions about like the 2000s, because even the credits had that feel. The opening credits with some of the effects and everything else, it had that feel to it. And and like and it's so fun. Like I'll give you a really this will be a good compliment for you. When I was watching this movie, I was 13 years old again, riding my bike 2 miles to go see Elektra, because I heard there might be a girl kiss in the movie. Like, like that's like I mean, like, just stupid logic like that. But it's just a fond memory of like these type of those Daredevil and Elektra, and like seeing all those movies, and like, and I don't know, I was fucking optimistic when I was 13, and not so fucking cynical as I am now at 31. So it's fun to remember those times, and remember, when, life seemed like there was more ahead, and it put me, I'm sure that was not your intention. You were out there to make a good film, but it had a really cool effect on a kid who was a preteen teenager in the very early 2000s, when this style was so popular and so in vogue. So I commend you and appreciate that.
And there was a thought like that. I mean, in both films, the new one that's in production and the previous one, the idea was like, I know Batman Forever is not a great film, but I remember at the end of that film, at the end of a lot of superhero films, you go out and you want to be like the superhero. You want to kick ass, and you send the audience out on like a punch, like, a feel good, and that was kind of the approach. Is like, treat like, if I was like 13 years old and watching a movie like this, I want to go out and hunt demons, ride a motorbike, and do stuff like that. And that's, you want to put an inspiration in it. I don't want to end my films on a bummer note, because that's robbing people of the joy that they had watching the film. So definitely, I just want people to kind of, I guess like Stallone does it, just motivate people and inspire people, and just get ready to kick ass.
I love that, and I think that more films nowadays need to have that. So I know we're all filmmakers and everything else. So Zach, I was curious if you had any perspective, especially with the feature, from a director's perspective. Maybe any questions about process, because we like to talk about that too. The process of filmmaking, and what those different steps were. So I'm curious and Zach's also our post guy as well. So he might have a few tidbits or things to add.
I don't really have any questions about the your directing process, but your post-production process, I would love to hear what that was like.
Yeah, on the first film, by the time we actually had wrapped the movie, we actually had ran out a lot of money, but there was a post-production process. I'll tell you, the second film's post-production is going to be even bigger. But in the first one, we had we would send the film out to different visual effects artists to do pieces here and there, and different, like there'd be a main visual effects guy, and he'd have other people do the pieces of the files. And that, in terms of sound design, there was like a few different people that would like work on the files, and you would basically send them the project files, and where the audio and the videos, and they'd send them back to you, and there's a lot of like back and forth like that. I'm trying to think. A lot of email, a lot of back and forth, a lot of sending things, maybe sometimes getting drives to people. I would say one thing that probably gave the most criticism on the fourth film was its sound mix. That I noticed, but that was another factor that we didn't have completion funds or the money to get a proper 5:1 mix on the film, and there was a time pressure to get it out at a certain point. But we did the best we could. Brian did the best he could, and yeah, the visual effects are pretty good. I think shooting that film was like intentionally knowing that we can't afford a lot of great CGI, so we knew only to use CGI at the more magical moments of the plot, So there was a lot of that factor, knowing that what we would get CGI artists to do for the film, and there was always references, like I would show Mario Bortas like other films. I'm like, can you do it like this? Can you do it like that? And there was, X amount of money for this and X amount of money for that, and how much we can afford those things. And I actually remember we had a colorist on the post-production who was hired to do the grade, and I popped in to see what he was doing, and he was just putting like a little overlay on in Adobe Premiere, and I kind of like, no, every shot has to be graded. You're not putting one overlay on a scene. Get out of here. And I took over his office. And I just graded every single fucking angle, like made sure it looked good, because to me color is very important, and you can't just put a flat blue and make something look dull and boring. It needs to be vibrant. So I mean, that was the thing. I think we were using DaVinci and Premiere for the grades. Pro Tools was used for the sound design. For visual effects, I couldn't really tell you what they were using for that, because I didn't really ask them. I would imagine After Effects would have been one of them. We didn't have too much CGI in the film. I know I did the title card actually myself, and I did the muzzle flashes myself. Yeah, there was a lot of dubbing. In actual fact, that was another factor. I knew that going in, that like this film's gonna be dubbed in loads of different languages. So usually when I go and shoot a film, the main priority, all you need to get is just clean dialogue, and that's and everything else, all from the ground up. All the sounds from walking to breathing, most of that is post sound. The only thing, most of it on the dialogue, about 50% of the dialogue was on-set dialogue, and 50% of it was ADR'd, because we wanted to sound clean, really good. And obviously the level mix on the final mix. I mean, we're hoping that when a new film comes out, that we'll put time into doing a remaster on the first film and get a better sound mix for people. And I know that because like all the sound files are all there, and they all sound fine. It's just a matter of mixing them properly, I suppose. Yeah, so we did the best we could. We didn't have a lot of money in total. In total, overall, including the expenditure on marketing and post-production, the film ended up costing about €70,000 when it's all said and done. Yeah, I don't know.
Very, very nice, very nice. Zach.
Oh, yeah. No, just to compliment your visual effects, I will say they are better than most of Disney's visual effects. So, the effort was definitely put in there. Good job on that. Visual style and everything was great. So, I mean, fantastic job on it. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. But, great job. I very much enjoyed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, actual fact, the scene where the hunters, actually the KIC, the demon hunters, they're hunting down all the red cloaked demons, and they're all shooting them. I was actually watching real life execution videos to see how gunfire looks and blood looks, like to see how it actually looks. I was watching ISIS execution videos. It was like, I know I shouldn't be, and it's messed up, but blood seems to be red smoke. It's not a sharp digital little sport. It's red smoke, and that's kind of what I just did.
So you went full Tom Savini. I'm gonna bring back my photos from Vietnam. And let's see what we get. I fucking love that. That's great. Anyway, so I'm curious. Because I'm an actor. I always like to talk to directors and everything else when it comes to the process with actors. Walk me through it. Like, how do you talk with actors, work with actors? I know we're an interesting bunch, and we're all different, and we all have our own little needs and everything else. So I'm curious, how you as a director work with your actors as you go through the process of creating the film.
In terms of directing actors, it really depends on the scenes, the context, and everything. So I know that, like, with Neve playing Taryn on the first film, anyway, we wanted her to be going through a lot. She plays three different personalities in that film. One personality is the kind of messer, immature teenager, like 16 or whatever. And one of the personalities is the moody, badass, broken vigilante in present day. And then the other one is she portrays Falstaff, Michael Parle's character, when she's possessed at certain points of the movie. So she has to go through those three different things. And I think me and Neve gone very well with that. We would talk about the mindset of the character and how to approach it. We talk about what we liked in other films and what we like in this character. And the thing was, she didn't get a rehearsal with this film because she was casted a week before filming because our main lead had dropped out, screwed us over. But luckily, we got lucky with Neve because she is also a stunt performer and really, really talented. But she was able to drop in and be really, really good. Then regarding the villain, Michael Parle, he knew the role. I mean, I told him it's kind of like imagine like Pinhead or Satan, or a very aristocratic, elegant, malicious, sinister guy, that has the power to charm but also strike you at any moment. And I think I would do like character biographies for a lot of main players on the film. So they'd get like a backstory of every character and they'd understand the mindset of the characters. Even characters that kind of smaller supporting roles, like some of the Demon Hunters. So they'd understand their life situations in the plot of the film, So you kind of, because in the fourth film, the audience is dropped in the middle of something that's probably bigger. And we're only getting a slice in the life of these characters on a pivotal plot line of a main plot line of their lives. And so that was kind of like the approach, is there's a lot has happened before and after this, and in terms of the cop, Detective Becca, I wanted him to be a mess. Everything on his life just went wrong, and he's on the path of redemption, but we have to put him in the biggest downward spiral to kind of get him out of that and maybe turn his life around. And so the first film has dark elements to it, and I would basically on set talk to the actors and explain where the characters are in these points in these situations. I suppose.
Nice, very nice. I love that when you have a creative, collaborative process with the whole thing. Yeah, the one thing I never want to overlook, because I always love having these conversations. Were there any funny stories from the feature film? Things that maybe went wrong, or the delivery truck didn't show up on time, or things you can laugh at now, but and then you're in the situation, you're like, oh my god, what happened here? Because we got years of those, but I always love to, it's almost a venting session at that point for us filmmakers to talk about some crazy shit that went wrong.
There's a lot on that first film. That film was extremely troubled. It's lucky it got finished, I'll be honest with you. Like, I would say, speaking of trucks, there was a point in time where there was an equipment truck that went missing. So, like, someone parked someone who was hired as a driver parked in some place that he couldn't remember was. He wasn't even in the country at the time. And so the producers had to find it and couldn't find it for a whole day, the equipment truck.
So he parked it in a place that he didn't remember where he parked it, and then left the country.
Yeah, and left it there for us, and we didn't know where it was. It was a complete disaster. And another disaster was, I can't go into a lot of problems on the film, but I would say a few. As you know, I have to recast the film. We shot about 35% of the film with different actors.
Oh boy!
And she decided to drop out when we decided to shoot the rest of the movie, and we were like prepping. I rent out a workshop and had special effects production designers, costume designers, all using that space for 2 months before shooting. So pre-production of 2 months, and about a week before film begins, she drops out, and some people were saying they would have given up, but I was like, no, there's too much money on the line. So we put a call out, and I got Neve on it. Neve dived into it. We just went straight into making the film. I had to unfortunately, we had to remake a bunch of scenes. However, there are scenes with the different actors that are still in the film. This is a Back to the Future situation, kind of like. I mean, in the flashback scenes, when you see the back of Taron in that white hoodie, it's more likely going to be the previous actress, or just actually an entire section when Taron, sneaks through the creepy building to find her little sister. All the shots up until Taron running over to her sister is a different actress, but because of the shadows and things, you cannot tell. And she was the same body and height type of Neve, so it worked out really well. It just cost us more money to remake a bunch of scenes in the film. There was
so you get to play Find Chris Stoltz a couple times. They in the film you're like, oh, which one is which? And Zach has told me many times that there are things in our films that he has noticed that he didn't get a chance to fix in post, and he's like, if you don't notice it, I'm never gonna tell you. So there's mysteries in our own stuff that I've never seen, but I'm sure it's quite interesting for you to find which one is which.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and here's the thing: is like, I mean, I've seen the film a million times. You're never going to tell unless someone like me tells someone, oh yeah, that's someone else there. Let me see what other things went wrong. It was there. Oh yeah. So
here we
during
go.
During the climax, when they Taron and Ethan and Becca go to the castle, and Taron and Becca go up the castle stairs, and they have a little word before she kicks open the door to see the cult and all stuff. When she's at that door with the two of them, and you see outside window of the castle, and we actually have a HMI inside that castle, a giant light just beaming down. It fell while we're shooting that scene. Broke and smashed. Somebody out there clumsily just made a fall, and I fell to my knees in what the fuck, what am I going to do? So I was in the castle shooting the scene, and I saw that, I heard the noise, and the light went down, and I fell to my knees saying, "Oh my fucking God." And I was just thinking about the cost of damages, and I was like, no, oh my God. Luckily, I don't know why, there was a second HMI we had. I was like, where am I spending this money? But we had a second HMI to shoot.
It's in that equipment trunk that you couldn't find. That's what the money's in. It's in another equipment trunk that you never found.
Still a big, really expensive light fell down and broke. And another thing that happened was someone who was doing the data wrangling almost deleted the previous day's footage by mistake on the set, and we couldn't find it. They did actually, but luckily the camera assistant had a copy of it, because we were like losing our mind on this one person who had actually just decided to clear the fucking drive.
They cleared the whole drive. Like, I was gonna ask, did they format the card
for today's filming? Yeah, because it's the start of the new day, and I'm like, did you not back that up? He's like, no. I'm like, oh my God. And I was like kicking walls and banging my head against the concrete wall near the castle. And then when the camera said, he just walked over. It's like, I made a copy. I was like, yes.
Oh my God.
So it's like grand.
Yeah, give whoever had a copy a medal. By the way, too, a quick fun fact. That happened with Toy Story 2. They accidentally deleted the entire film, but because one of the associate producers was on maternity leave, she had a copy at home.
Oh my God.
They lost the entire movie, like not just a scene, the whole fucking thing. And they accidentally deleted the whole movie, and it was only because of this producer that they actually still had it. So like 5 years or 6 years of it, I couldn't even imagine. Like, we're panicking over, like, I have goosebumps, like, hearing your story about one fucking scene.
That is literally one of my worst nightmares on set. I handle all that myself because I'm too goddamn paranoid to let somebody fuck that up. Because if somebody did, I might actually kill them.
Yeah, that might actually happen. He's the only person who's allowed to say, I'll fix it in post, because he literally will be the person to fix it in post. Yeah. I think I need to like stop drinking this coffee. Because I think my heart just fucking dropped.
I am so sorry you had to go through that. That is one of my worst nightmares to ever happen. That is terrifying. A whole day's worth of footage. God only knows how much you spent that day. Gone because some asshole decided to delete.
Yeah, or format.
Did you not think to go up the chain of command? Make sure it was backed up at least twice?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yes.
That's,
Man, it was so mortifying. I remember, like, those situations happened in a space of 12 hours. The HMI falling the night before, and the drive thing was literally the morning after. Oh my God.
The fact you didn't kill anybody that day, I commend you, because I would have lost my mind.
I would have had to,
or my head would have exploded.
I would have had to bail him out of jail. Because he would have killed somebody. And then like that. What's so funny? Like, we've heard so many stories, and we've had our own stories. Like we've had issues with renting cop cars. We've had. We picked a film date that had every religion's holiday under the sun, like Easter, a Jewish holiday, and another holiday as well. We've literally had all of this stuff. We a guest who had a TV blow up and start a fire in their set. That story makes my heart drop way more than any of these other stories.
Yeah.
Because the whole fucking thing could blow up as long as you if you had a choice, if the set was burning down, your choice is to fuck all the other things, grab the day's work. That's the first thing you go to. First it's the people, second it's the day's work. That's it. You grab the day's work and then you run the fuck out.
Dude, that was Spielberg's idea on Jaws. Fuck the boat, save the audio equipment.
I don't know if you've ever heard that story. On Jaws they had two boats, one that was supposed to sink and one that wasn't. The one that wasn't started to sink. and literally Steven Spielberg is on a bullhorn, like, get the actors off the boat, and there was some poor old sound man with his $50,000 Niagara recording machine over his head. He's like, fuck the actors, save the sound department. And he ended up tripping, and it fell. And it fell in the salt water. And I remember, like, without missing a beat, he's like, well, I guess that's a wrap for sound. I love it. And by the way, this is we're all friends. It's all among friends here. So this is a time for us to vent and, you know, and have a fun time talking about this. So I'm sure that this was a nice cathartic experience for you to get it off your chest.
I mean, there's an even worse situation that happened on the film. And I mean, I suppose I could tell, but I can't name names.
That's
no. Whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want to do. Now you've pieked my curiosity. What the hell's worse than that?
Maybe I won't tell you, but I'll kind of suggest a bit. We had a situation that one of the actors just was really hard to find. And we literally had to, like, they were just really difficult to get a hold of, and we actually had to drive around to find where they were. It was like finding a missing person at some point, and they were actually on their own actual downward spiral, and it just made production really hard, and you know, delayed a lot of production on the days. It was a nightmare as well. There was all these factors that tried to get in the way to stop the film getting made. The fact that people have a film that they can watch that makes sense, that looks nice, that has a coherent story, is a miracle. I'll tell you that. Like,
filmmaking is a miracle all by itself. It truly is. Yeah. It's just a fucking miracle that, like, shit gets done. The of any kind, of dealing with so many personalities, you know, and you have. That's the thing about you know, doing, and I've been in the producer role, the on-set, and then also to the director role as well, and for you as well. And it's like literally trying to wrangle like 5 or 6 different ships in the middle of a storm while all the different ships are going into 5 different directions, and then you all have to wrangle them back into this area. And then sometimes you have to make sure that one ship is 20 feet, one ship's 10 feet, one ship's 5 feet. And it's truly a miracle that, well, first of all, that all of us are not in insane asylums, you know, because of the trauma. But the other thing is that they actually get fucking done. Yeah,
exactly. Like, to me, I'm happy that the film is done, it exists, and it makes sense, looks good, and I'm proud of it. I think it's a good film. You know. So.
No, absolutely. So you know, I did have one thing too is we did watch one of your other shorts though too, and I didn't want to not talk about it, you know, because Zach's a fan of the game, Dead by Daylight. So, you know, I'm sure, so I'm curious because Zach was gonna have he's played the game far more than I have, so he's gonna have probably more questions and more comments than anything and everything else. But, you know, I'm curious, you know, why did you, you know, particularly want to go after that? Are you a fan of the game, or, you know, or was there another idea involved in it?
Well, first thing I'll say is that we did want to hook someone up, but there was a lot of health and safety precautions and we couldn't get it done. And it was in the script. It was supposed to happen, didn't happen. So if you're wondering why there's no hooking in the thing, it's actually, things got in the way from that actually happening. However, I'm a huge fan of Dead by Daylight. I don't play as often as I used to now because they nerfed Dead Hard, but I used to play it a lot. And I was going to make it, the actual short became much more successful than I expected it to be. And I should have made more, but I didn't. However, so I wanted to kind of make a fan film of it to showcase that I could do a visual, true adaptation of the tone and feel of a video game, you know. So I chose Dead by Daylight. I'm like, let me see if I can emulate the tone of the game in like 6 minutes, you know. And I feel like, because I used that location for a music video for a band called Clan Zymot Chi, and I remember I was there and I was like, this looks like the Macmillan estate of Dead by Daylight. I might do a short here. So we talked about, and initially it was going to be Trapper in the script, but then Halloween 2018 was coming out, and we're like, okay, maybe we'll change it to Mars, but I'll leave a Trapper in it as an Easter egg. It's kind of say that, oh, there's loads of other killers in these realms or whatever, but that came off wrong because people think, oh, why is Meyer putting traps down? And I'm like, I didn't expect people to really be that straight about it. Like, to me, I was just putting an Easter egg in there. It wasn't to do with Myers, but whatever, fine. I cast people that look like characters, and I think it gives off the tone of the game. But that cost me about €400 to make. We shot it in about 7 hours, from like, I don't know, from 7 p.m. to the time like it was starting to get sunrise. Yeah, I just wrote it in like a match, like how would a match play out in the game. I was bummed I couldn't hook up anybody, but it turned out really well, and it seems that like the majority of the gamers seem to have responded very well to the short. I mean, it's gotten like a few 100,000 views, and a lot of people connect to it. A lot of people say Meg was well represented. I was like, okay, yeah, because like that line she says, hello, yeah, that line she says, "Fuck that shit, I'm out," was kind of like, well, I think it was kind of like a meme of what people would say regarding Dead by Daylight. When they decide, fuck it, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to rescue the person. I want to just escape rather than do the rescue and the end game. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was fun. We shot that on the Sony A7S, and we used a bunch of LED panels, not too much stuff. And the costume itself, I knew a guy who was a huge Halloween fan, Michael Myers fan, and he had that costume. And he had a Halloween 2 costume, and I decided to go against the game and choose the Rob Zombie costume, kind of, because I was like, not because it's in the Rob Zombie universe, but it was the idea that like, if Myers was around since the early days now, he would probably look like that. you know, like he wouldn't be ironing his boiler suit, So that was kind of the approach there. Have him in like a Raggedy Myers costume, because that was in my head. That was a few little liberties I made, So but I think it was fun. It was just for fun. I didn't care if people liked it or not, but yeah. What did you think?
I definitely thought it was solid, well shot, and everything. You essentially addressed all the questions I had, especially about the whole trap. That was going to be the first thing I asked. How come there was a bear trap when Michael was the killer? But no, when you explained it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense, that with the entity and everything like that. Maybe the trapper left one there and he just decided, well, I'm finished here. I don't need that thing. I got 100
It was
of
a
them in my
bad
storage
decision on my part. Yeah, it was a bad decision on my part to put that there, because like there's just too many people asking that question. My bad. I just thought, it was an Easter egg to put in for people, but people connected it to Mars. I just figured like it's 6 minutes. How do I put as much Dead by Daylight in 6 minutes?
Yeah. As for not including the hook or anything, like I assumed there was just like, well, you're just no way you could figure out how to add the hook. So I'm just like, all right, well, I guess he activated a Mori totem or something like that. So he's just murdering everybody instead of hooking them. So I'm like, that was like the least of my concerns, because as a filmmaker, I understand, yeah, that'd be a pain in the ass to pull off. But, your location, everything was solid. That was one of the things I was most impressed with, because when it comes to getting locations, I suck and I hate it because everyone wants to charge an arm and a leg for them. So it's just like, yeah, solid, looks good. And yeah, costumes were great. Yeah, solid, and it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun, and and I think Zach and I were like, oh, it's a Rob Zombie mask, and we're like, well, at least you didn't go with Return of the Michael Myers mask. We were fine with the Rob Zombie mask. But no, it was fun. It was exactly fun, and I'm glad you added in the ending there, where fuck this, I'm out, and type of deal. Like, that was fun. It reminded me of Zach and I's days of playing what's the one PS game that we always love to do with all the action heroes?
Oh, Broforce.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Broforce days. And the
Broforce. Yeah.
The it reminded me of that.
I would always make make sure I get to the chopper and leave them behind as the whole world explodes behind them because it's funny.
Oh, dude, we would just freak out. We're like, oh, fuck you, Zach.
Every time they could never make it to the chopper. All right, we're at the end of the level.
He was as bad as like that Family Guy joke about the old basketball game. Corner three.
I was watching that yesterday.
Corner three. He was terrible. But no, it was a lot of fun. And I remember asking them questions when they're doing the generators. I'm like that's 2 generators. How many generators do they need? And I was like 4. So it was fun to have that kind of conversation while it was all going on.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, but I use Nia's pain sound when Nia was getting killed, or actual voice actor sound, just for a little thing when she dies in the shorts, just kind of like, oh, that's Nia's voice. But obviously it was just for that little bit. But yeah, there was tiny little sound cues from the game used, and so
nice.
So yeah, so you know what, I typically wrap up every every podcast with a question of the podcast, where we go around the horn and we talk. And I think this question is more appropriate, but it might be a little bit more deep. We kind of already answered it a little bit, but I want to get into more of a deep dive with it. Is what do we all think is one of the biggest issues with independent films, whether it's shorts or with features? Something that you notice that if they change 1 or 2 items, this would elevate it to a much better level. So I'm curious, and it could be horror, it could be any other genre, but there's typically a lot more independent horror than there is any other genre. So I'm curious, when it comes to independent films, what is your observation, from other filmmakers? Gosh, if they just did this 1 or 2 things, this movie would be so much better and so much more quality. They took a minute to take care of X, Y.
This is just my opinion. I mean, so with the second Demon Hunter film, it's a lot of fun. And to me, I feel like the problem with a lot of independent films is, and I remember there was a time where I used to go to a lot of festivals. A lot of them take themselves way too seriously. That's one problem. Another problem is a lot of them come quite dull, or just misery porn in a sense. I feel sometimes it's the script where people kind of set the whole film in the house, or they compress or they compromise their own vision because they feel it's cheapest way to make the film is shoot it in the one location. That stuff doesn't do it for me. I was like, if you can tell a story and you can do all these different things to keep it engaging and exciting, take the risk, see if you can get the location, see if you can get all the actors, see if you can get all these pieces together. To me, I could never do a situational film because it just would bore the hell out of me. I couldn't do it. I think social drama or social horror films, or they call it elevated horror films, or independent ones, I they don't really do much for me. And I think a lot of people are trying. There is people that like those films, but there's a lot of them in the independent scene. And I just feel like just have a good, fun script, tell a good story with good characters, and don't compromise your vision. I know you may not have much money, and either tell it or don't tell it. If you're not going to give the script justice, don't make the film. And maybe write it as a book, or do something, or tell a different story. But I can't really tell people what to do with their work. People should just make what they want to make to express themselves, even if it's good or not. But just my 2 cents is just make it entertaining. Don't bore me.
Anything worth doing is worth doing right. Zach?
Lack of passion. There are too many goddamn filmmakers who feel like they need to make a film just because they were told to make it. Like for like features, plenty of filmmakers I've met. Well, actually, more people from like school and stuff like that. We need to make the feature just because we need to make it, and it's like no. No, do not do it for that reason. Make the feature because you want to make the feature. Because you can tell when somebody wants to make the movie they're making or when they have to make the movie they're making. There is a clear difference in quality. And it fucking annoys the shit out of me because all you're doing is wasting a whole bunch of people's time. Because at the end of the day, the film's probably going to be crap. And it just... Don't fucking do that. Make the film because you want to. Put everything you can into this. Because people could tell. People could tell when you actually put the effort into your movies. Like, it's a night and day difference. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
No, absolutely 100% agree. And I think I'll close it out with this is the little touches. The little attention to detail. A little bit more is what catapults it from bad to can be pretty good. And what I mean by little touches is don't fucking shoot it in the same, in your bedroom. That's clearly your bedroom and then has all of your things. Take a little bit of detail into set design, into the visual look. Take a little bit more time into sound because I cannot tell you how many fucking independent movies that we've seen have horrible sound. Take a little bit into these extra details, and also too, more importantly, and this is just from somebody who's a lover of film, like not even a filmmaker, but a lover of film, is make it something, and more, to your point, Zoe, make it something that's entertaining. That's going to be engaging. That's going to be, I'm going to want to see it. There's ways to make it, express your vision in a way that is entertaining and it's going to captivate an audience. But I think one of the ways that you do captivate an audience, not just to mention a good story, and engaging actors and great direction and things of that nature, but it really just comes down to the little extra something here and there, like, a little bit extra detail to sound, a little bit more mixing, not being afraid to go and ask, studios or recording artists to use their music, a little bit of set design, take the little bit of effort because that little bit will be so impactful on the screen. Just that little more attention to detail and not just like, well, we'll just shoot it in our bedroom, and everything else and whatever. We'll get the scene done. No. Take that little extra time to give it a little bit more. Express what you're expressing in the scene, not just within the actors and the dialogue, but what's going on behind them. We made a fucking fake brick wall, in one of them to simulate a city apartment. And it costs, $30 or $50 or $100, but it was that little extra, that little thing that made it so much more engaging and so much more professional looking. And that's really, I think, what makes the difference a lot of the time. So, I absolutely love that. So, Zoe, this is your opportunity. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. This is your time to look directly into the camera and plug any of your social medias and where the good people can find all of your stuff and where they can follow you and stay up to date with all the amazing things that you're doing.
Okay, so you can find me on. I know I'm not as social as most people, but I do have the channels, I guess. Go to Zoe Kavanagh Film on Instagram, you'll find me. I'm sure if you type my name to YouTube, you'll find some of my work. Right now I'm in post-production on Demon Hunter Time to Kill, which is a non-stop action comedy horror wild film. It's going to be amazing. So working away in that, and just check out the film's Facebook page, I guess, for updates on that film. It's the same Facebook page as the fourth film. I think it's like fine there. That's my focus at the moment, is focusing on the post-production on my next film. And yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'll close this out. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Nightmares Podcast. You can find us where all podcasts can be found at YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, all that great stuff. And if you are watching this on YouTube, if it could be so awesome to stab that like button, smash that subscribe, and click that little dingy bell to be notified every time we drop amazing content right here on MHN. And you can find us on all of our social medias on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and
Slasher,
the application for all things horror. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Nightmares Podcast. Bye, guys.